The opening night of the 2025 men's NCAA tournament, the first four in Dayton, Ohio. The madness now officially underway. We had two games last night on a Tuesday. The first one, a thriller, a near buzzer beater to try to be the true number 16 seed in the South region and take on the number one overall seed in this tournament, that being the Auburn Tigers. The second game, not exactly nearly as close, but a lot of storyline entering. Of course, it was North Carolina and San Diego State. The Tar Heels' inclusion into the 2025 men's NCAA tournament, rather controversial. They were the last team into the field of 68. Many thought with a 1-12 quad one record on the resume, the Heels were not deserving. A small caveat. Anything that happens in the tournament is not a proof or an indication that the committee made the right choice. It is based on your body of work and your resume before the NCAA tournament. But of course, for Hubert Davis and Carolina, it can certainly add that motivation. It can certainly add that bulletin board material to try to prove any doubters or naysayers wrong. And North Carolina might have used that last night in standing in their wake. San Diego State, 95-68, the victory DRS for UNC. The Heels easily cover as a 4.5-point favorite. A total of 142.5 does sky over. North Carolina was up by 24 points at the break. Midway through the second half, the Heels led by 40 points. This game was never really close last night in Dayton.
No, it certainly was. And how about like early in the game? I remember the announcer saying, as I was, still up watching the first half of that, like, boy, look at that. UNC has 7 turnovers like the first 5 minutes. They better settle down. And boy, did they ever settle down to a 47-23 lead at the break. The calling card, as we talked about yesterday, and rightfully so, San Diego State usually plays great defense. They get in the passing lanes. They force turnovers, and they were doing that early. But it was apparent that no matter what San Diego State did, North Carolina had an answer. Like, R.J. Davis is a really good player. He's not all that efficient most of the time. 8 of 12 from the floor, 6 of 6 from three-point range. You even get Seth Trimble with 27 points off the bench with 16 points, going 5 of 10, including a perfect free throw margin of 6 and 6. So when I look at this game and say, how does it set up? Does it okay that Carolina should have been in the tournament? Not necessarily. But, boy, if you wanted to use that motivation as a chip that we joked about, like watch them get to the Sweet 16 of the Elite Eight because they felt like they deserved they would be there and it's us against the world, that was a great starting point and a calling card. I'll tell you right now for Ole Miss, they're watching that basketball game saying,
for sure,
is this really an 11 seed that we're getting now? What did this turn into at this point? 95 points on the road in a neutral site against a great defensive team. That was the most impressive performance this season overall for the Tar Heels in the time they needed it the most.
DRS, the 12th game this year that North Carolina has scored 90-plus. We talked a lot about UNC breaking down this game yesterday. Final 10 games of this season, including the ACC tournament. 2 of those games against Duke, a loss against the Blue Devils. The other 8 games, a victory and 7 covers in that 8-game span. UNC did not have the quad one wins on its resume against the best of the best. That is where Carolina faltered. But to the Heels' credit, they understood the task at hand down the home stretch of this college basketball campaign. Little to no margin for error against the teams they were expected to beat. And Carolina did exactly that, looking impressive in doing so, much like they did last night, covering as a 4.5-point favorite. And you mentioned R.J. Davis. If your best player, who has been in Chapel Hill forever, who has played the most games in program history and is one of your leading scorers in program history, is going to be perfect from three-point land, 6 of 6, it is going to be difficult to beat North Carolina. Meanwhile, for San Diego State, an unfortunate representation for a team that has been really good under Brian Dutcher. Of course, they played in the national title game just 2 seasons ago. Last year, they were ousted by Connecticut in the Sweet 16, losing by 30. That was the largest margin of defeat for SDSU under Brian Dutcher. Well, last night, that almost got there once again. Not a great representation for San Diego State. And, Donnie, we said they'll let you shoot the 3 if you want it. UNC making 14 triples as a team last night. That was really one of the main differences.
Again, against a good defensive team, North Carolina goes in neutral site with all that pressure. 53% of the team from the floor, 58% from three-point range, and 88% from the free throw line. You look at San Diego State's numbers on that, too. They weren't terrible. They shot 40% as a team from the floor, 30% from three, which isn't great, and 61% from the free throw line. But you might have looked at that and said, oh, it's probably an ugly rock fight game, and maybe Carolina does win. You just didn't expect Carolina to put up 95 points in that spot. It was amazing because even early on, you saw the open three-point shots going down. Like, ooh, will this continue? And yes, it continued all the way through the night. A laugher in this game was one of the last thing I expected. And understand this. If you were just looking at those betting metrics and analyzing and saying, hey, man, the whole world's on Carolina, that line seems too high. Boy, that was one for the public last night, and the get back was big. The tax was there on the Tar Heels, and it didn't even matter.
Yeah, it certainly was, DRS. The second time in as many games for North Carolina where the betting public has loved the Tar Heels. Both you and I have been astonished by these numbers in terms of the spread betting, money, and bets. And it still really has come out in favor of UNC, keeping it close against Duke, despite being down by more than 20 against the Blue Devils in the ACC tournament semifinal. And, of course, all the love last night. So, North Carolina advances now as the true 11 seed in the South region. Opening round of 64 game for UNC Friday afternoon against the 6th seed in Ole Miss. The odds are out as of right now. You said, what is Chris Beard and Ole Miss hoping for? That North Carolina got all of their good offense out last night. But you see it right there, DRS. North Carolina is the lower seed and yet booked as an ever so slight moneyline favorite.
Yeah, look, they're going to get the momentum. That's what you have. Sometimes you start your tournament earlier than the other teams. You've been there, done that in a high-leverage situation. Now, you do have to travel, go to another city, when obviously Ole Miss is going to have that. They just have to travel one time. But when you feel you're already in quote-unquote playoff mode, that could be big. And again, we talked about it before the tournament started. We've seen this before. UCLA made a run like, how'd they get in? Yeah, they got in and said, okay, we're going to show you how much we deserve to be in this tournament and start rucking shop against teams in the higher seeds. And also understand this. Is it a true 11 seed the way Carolina played? Like, wow, if they played like that all season long, they would have been on the 2 line at this point. Maybe catching fire at the right time. They just needed a little bit more motivation, and maybe they have it now.
2011, the first year of the first 4. Every NCAA tournament since, with the exception of 2019, a team that was victorious in Dayton wins at least one game in the round of 64. We'll talk about the first game of the night, a thriller, next. So if the second game in Dayton between the at-large teams battling for the 11 spot in the South region was kind of a stinker or a clunker or a blowout, the first game of the 2025 men's NCAA tournament, the first matchup in the first 4, was the exact opposite. It came down to the final few seconds between Alabama State, the champions of the SWAC, into the big dance for the first time since 2011. In St. Francis, PA, the champions of the NEC, dancing for the first time since 1991. DRS tied at 68 all with less than 4 seconds remaining. Alabama State inbounding the ball on their own end of the floor. They throw a Hail Mary pass down to the opposite end near the basket. Ball gets tipped around, ends up in the welcoming arms of Alabama State's Amar Knox, who is right there to make the layup for the win with less than a second left. A near buzzer beater in our first game in a tournament known for its madness. There is nothing quite like the month of March. The Hornets victorious for the first time in program history in the NCAA tournament in their 5th ever trip. 70-68 over the Red Flash of St. Francis. Now, St. Francis, PA does cover as a 3.5-point dog, but Amar Knox will be a legend for Alabama State for eternity. That guy on your screen.
Fantastic stuff. Loved the game. Enjoyed it all the way through. One of those games I figured I'd probably tune in for a couple minutes, then tune out, and maybe hopefully be able to stay up for the North Carolina game. Watch it all the way through the second half. Back and forth, they meant monster shot after monster shot under 2 minutes. Was so much fun to watch. And also, when we talk about fun to watch and where the NCAA gets it right, and not even just talking about the tournament, Ben, you know what we don't get in the NBA? Unbelievable plays like we saw to end that game. 2 seconds left, throw it up, maybe something good happens, a layup in the buzzer, unbelievable theater. maybe we could have just called a timeout and advanced it to the front court and, somebody would have got a shot off. Like the NBA misses out on so many golden opportunities with that horrendous timeout rule that we always get. And it always shines the brightest with all the eyes on March Madness, and it filtered yesterday. We weren't talking about Carolina. Hey, what a great victory by them. This was the game everybody talked about when it was supposed to be the game that everybody forgot about. Loved what I saw, but understand this. If you did take St. Francis, you covered that spread. But if you would have gave me, Ben, the old crystal ball before this game, hey, Donnie, got a hot tip for you. St. Francis is going to shoot 50% from the floor, 46% from three-point range, and 71% from the free throw line. St. Francis moves on easily. But when you mix in the turnovers and extra rebounds, you see one team shot the ball 48 times, the other team shot it 70 times. Extra chance opportunities, which included the biggest extra chance opportunity at the end of the game. Right place, right time. And by the way, coach, great play call on that. How many players would have just thrown it in around the top of the key and shot a 75-footer and, okay, we're going to extras? Fantastic move to say, hey, no, what do we have to lose? Throw it down the other end. If it gets tipped around and it's the end of the game, no big deal. But we might get a bonus break, and they got the biggest bonus break in a victory and moving forward. Love the final couple minutes. These kids were competing at the highest level, and I thought it was great.
A Hornets Hail Mary that will live on forever in Alabama State athletics history. There is no doubt about it. Tony Madlock, the head coach for Alabama State, has only been there for a few years. Got the Hornets to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 14 years since 2011. Your heart does break for Rob Krimmel and St. Francis, PA, because they played out of their minds. 24 of 48, 10 of 22 from deep. Juan Cranford Jr., 5 of 7 from deep for the Red Flash last night. The Dayton, Ohio native in his hometown. Chris Moncrief hit the game-tying three to equalize at 68 with less than a half minute remaining in regulation. And, Donnie, it was that turnover battle that we highlighted. Alabama State takes care of the basketball. St. Francis, PA, not nearly as much. And in the closing minutes, tied at 68, in those closing seconds, TJ Madlock, Tony's, the head coach's son, walks to the line for a 1-and-1, misses the first. There's a battle for the ball. They come away with it, that being St. Francis, but then they turn the ball over so they never get a shot, even though they were in possession in the final 15 seconds of regulation. That, we thought, could be the difference. A few extra possessions for Alabama State, many more than a few last night. So the Hornets, with their first ever win in NCAA tournament history, move on to be the 16th seed in the South region, where they will take on the number 1 overall seed in Auburn. And sure, it's more than a 30-point spread, but the opportunity will be one Alabama State relishes.
And by the way, also, I still see tweets going around like, oh, man, I can't believe Alabama State and St. Francis not even really in the tournament. That's a shame. Those guys deserve to be like, that is the moment they absolutely love to. You don't think Alabama State just wanted to get into the regular tournament and get housed in game number 1? You got a victory? Memories for a lifetime. Come on, people.
And money for a long time as well. We'll talk more about that next.